Um, Talk about the need to have good organizational skills as a chaplain, and why is that important? And
Because you run into situations where there's a lot of chaos. If you have a school bus accident, or if you have, a family with a bunch of small children involved, if you don't have a plan in place to deal with what do we do with the children if they're okay, but mom and dad are in the hospital and they live in Virginia and you're in Texas, you have to have the people in place to carry out the entire plan, to get the kids taken care of, the adults taken care of. Whatever situation you find yourself in, you may have a situation where you need to know who's got a backhoe that can pick up trash to see if somebody's trapped underneath a house that was knocked down by a tornado. You have to have all those people in place and know who to call and trust in the fact that they can get there and get the job done for you. Otherwise, you just feed the chaos then, because once you lose control, it's very hard to get it back again.
you also have to be sort of quick on your feet, when you can't scenario everything in advance. You just have to be able to make decisions on the fly. Have you seen a chaplain or emergency people make the situation worse because of bad decisions and so forth?
Absolutely. There are times when the situation is so overwhelming that the first thing that comes to your mind might not be the right thing, and you go with it, and it turns out that you have to back up and start over again, just because it was something that either you never experienced before, you have no history with this, you didn't even know this kind of thing could happen, and it's happening right in front of you, and sometimes it's just a matter of backing up and starting over again, and trying to keep the chaos and the mess down to a minimum.
Is there somebody that in your experience has been, and you can call them out by name, that has just been very, very astute at that and has just knows how to organize?
As far as police chaplains go, Jack Poe is probably the best there is at that kind of thing. He can get things organized. He has all the connections where he's at, and he knows who to call and when to call them. I've run into a lot of people like that who have been very well organized, have lots of connections, and if you make one phone call, they'll make the other 50 to make things happen. And I'm always grateful for people like that, because I don't have the time when things are happening to stop and call a dozen people, but I know people who can do that for me. And usually that's one of the very first things I try to establish in a new chaplaincy or in a new situation is, who would I call if this happened? And I'll talk to the chief of police or the sheriff or the state police or whoever. Who would they normally use in a situation like this? And try to get a list put together, go personally and talk to them and say, can you help me if this happens? Will you help me? And I very rarely have run into anybody that said no, because it's their community too, and they're more than willing to help when really bad things happen.
What is it that you would, describe to me what you see someone like Jack Poe doing that is so rare, or that
he just can take command of a situation like nobody else. The Oklahoma City bombing, perfect example of that. When people were trying to get in and trying to help, thinking they were helping, Jack knew how many chaplains he needed, where they needed to be, and just politely excused the other ones and let them, told them to go home.
Not so politely.
Or not so politely at times, but he, you know, he understood that. He, you know, he knew his people, first of all, the people that he chaplained on a daily basis. He knew their needs. He had experience with federal law enforcement, and he could put it all together in a really tight-knit package that did a lot of good for a lot of people.